There may come a time in our lives when we just don't know what to do next. We just don't know. It can happen when we're in grief, when we're afraid, when we have just so many decisions to make that making one more just seems impossible. It can happen in parenting, caregiving, job searching, during a pandemic, during a health crisis. All of a sudden, our world may feel like it has been turned upside down. It can be one of those impossible moments. You may have thought you saw it coming, or it could be a complete shock. That's where I want us to explore today. What do we do in those times? What might we turn to when we don't know what to do? As Unitarian Universalists, this can be a personal and solitary task to seek a source of spiritual strength. But it doesn't have to be. I vividly remember a time when a mentor of mine found himself stuck in one of those impossible moments. While I was in college, I was an intern with our Protestant chaplain. I helped him with mailings and meals for our weekly Vespers services. These were contemplative services, and they were all followed by a meal, which was brilliant planning on the Protestant chaplain's part, because on Wednesday night was when all of our meal plan points may have run out in the week. So he offered us all a safe place to come for a meal. Our chaplain would often lead those services, and sometimes would be a guest speaker or fellow students. And all faiths were welcome. We had Buddhists and Christians, Unitarian Universalists and Hindus and Jews and Muslims, and those who had never been to a religious service before. We were open to everyone, and we would often sit in concentric circles on pew cushions at the front of the church, up on the chancel. Our services would end by passing a candle around to everyone who wished to speak, to share a word that inspired them that day during that service. It felt familiar to me. It was centering. It filled my spirit each Wednesday. I found this chaplain to be grounding and inspiring. And I was honored when he asked me to be his intern my sophomore year, and we worked together for another 3. When we started school that August of 2001, we had a lot of ideas about the year. Early September, everything changed. On 9/11, that Tuesday morning, it was one of those impossible moments. For those of us on campus, we were about 2.5 hours from New York City. We didn't know what to do next, and neither did our chaplain. He was deep in his own grief and his own shock. And he wondered with me, what could he possibly do on that next day's Vespers service? What could he possibly say? We wondered, and together we came up with a plan. We gathered all the worship leading resources we had access to on campus. We spread out these texts and resources, hymnals, books of poetry, Bibles, sacred texts from around the world. I contributed my own book of UU quotes, my own copy of Singing the Living Tradition, which is in the pews, it's the gray one, and my Bible. When students arrived, we invited them to look through the sources, to look for the words that would be the sources of strength and healing that they needed. And we had a large group that evening. What we also gave them that evening is one of my favorite organizing tools, Post-its. We had so many little blue Post-its that we needed more that we ended up tearing them into little strips, because everyone who was there was invited to mark the passages that were meaningful to them, the hymns that were meaningful to them, with a little blue Post-it. And I do believe music was playing, but what I remember were the Post-its. Because partway through that time together, we invited those who wished to share what were the sources of strength that they found that evening in the chapel. And we read. We heard one another's voices, sharing the words that would hold us and hold that space. And the wisdom and strength didn't need to come from one worship leader that day. It came from all of us. It was deeply moving. And my hymnal still has those blue sticky notes in it. They're dotting so many pages. There are several UU hymns, a Christian hymn, a traditional Hindu hymn that's in our hymnal, and in the back, one of the Jewish readings and one of the Taoist readings. All have these stickies from 25 years ago. And my Bible has one, the 23rd Psalm. Each point to words that were meaningful to someone in that community during an impossible time. We didn't know what would be right to say or do, but we found it together, didn't we? These blue Post-its I see as little markers of knowing that these are the words that filled with meaning and sources of strength for those in our community, and maybe they could be for others. And I revisit them from time to time and see what I can learn from the words that held my fellow students. There's a saying that I found helpful. I learned it a little while ago, and I thought about it as a congregational leader and our spiritual journeys. You may have heard this before in different settings, or maybe in a religious setting. We know what we know what we don't know, but we don't know what we don't know. The chaplain and I didn't know. And we didn't know what would happen. And we made room for deep meaning making. And in the knowing, Ani DeFranco's song and picture book. Thank you, Anne. Ani names the great mystery, a knowing that transcends our understanding. She invites us to recognize the depth within each of us and see beyond our surface identities. We're more than just our names, our size, our favorite game. We are complex beings, ever evolving. And my name does have a story. I love to tell it. And I wonder if your name has a story as well. It might not be your favorite story, but I'd love to know about your favorite food or your favorite game, but also your beliefs and how they might change. Underneath all that we know is the knowing. Underneath all that we know is always growing. As we move through our lives, we may grow and be nurtured and inspired by the words that move us, and we draw from the traditions that we came from. We evolve. Oh my gosh, is that our little baby sleeping? I had him on my back yesterday, and I know those little snuffles very well. Sweet dreams, little one. We're grown by sacred words and sacred little sleeping babies. So Unitarian Universalism is a living tradition, inspired by those who came before. We are invited to rework and wrestle with and explore and share. Sacred words that we grew up with may still hold those meanings, and they may continue to hold comfort. Or maybe we're ready for a new interpretation and new words to match what's on our hearts. We're not alone in doing this. Bobby McFerrin composed the musical interpretation of the 23rd Psalm that our choir so beautifully sang. Thank you. In an interview about why he wrote this song, Bobby McFerrin explained, "The 23rd Psalm is dedicated to my mother. She was a driving force in my religious and spiritual education. I have so many memories of her singing in church. But I wrote it because I'd been reading the Bible one morning and I was thinking about God's unconditional love. How we crave it, but we have so much trouble believing we can trust it, how we can fully understand it." He goes on to say, "I left my reading and spent time with my family, with my wife and children. Watching her with them, the way she loved them, I realized one of the ways we are shown glimpses of how God loves us is through our mothers. They cherish our spirits, they demand that we become our best selves, and they take care of us." His spiritual reflection and growth inspired a beautiful new song, filled with meaning and loved by many. The 23rd Psalm is a Bible passage of comfort and protection and with vivid imagery. And if this is true for you, I hope that you felt held by the words here today. And if those words weren't the right ones for you, I invite you to keep on searching and learning and sharing until we find the words that hold and speak to your heart. I wonder if the reading by Unitarian Universalist Melissa Jeter it felt similar. Did it hold in the same way? "Love is my guide, I shall not falter. Love calls me to rest when I feel disconnected. Beloveds, lead me to deep waters where I can sit in solitude." I love the imagery. Love call me to rest when I feel disconnected. That can be something for us to do when we don't know what to do. Maybe just breathe. I love hearing about the stories that you share. I love telling stories, we know that. And I love hearing about the connections that we make with our sources of faith. They may be source stories about your favorite hymn, about a poem you've memorized, a Bible passage that you heard growing up that still speaks to you. Perhaps the act of reading the words is comforting, or perhaps it's translating it into your own words, rewording them, reworking them. When we take the time, we can be moved again by these sacred words. We can be moved in a new way, and we don't have to do it alone. We have a community of care who I'm sure would be interested in what you have to say. The sources of strength that you might share with us could help offer a collection of prayers and songs that have the potential to be just as meaningful as what was shared in that candlelit chapel on that Wednesday evening. We might not always have a chaplain with us to brainstorm, but we do have a lot of people here who would be happy to sit with you, to wonder with you, to explore with you. And you may know that we are rebuilding our church library with lots of books and resources Some may be familiar to you, and we are continuing to add new materials all the time. I invite you to check out the new library, and it will be a lending library soon. And if you were to want to leave a little post-it, marking a passage or a song or a place that speaks to you, then you'd be leaving a little footprint, a little treasure map for the rest of us to see. These were words. This was something that supported and held someone in our congregation. I wonder what it is. What's it all about? So I'm going to make sure that we have lots of little post-its in that room as well. If you're curious where it is, as you leave the sanctuary and go through our lobby, the library is the first room on the right. It used to be called room 6. I like to call it the library. We have a library. So we will brainstorm, we will share, we will learn from one another. And some of them may be familiar songs. We will have hymnals in there. And sometimes we hear a song that we've sung before, and it has a different meaning. And one of those songs that may put me to sleep sometimes, Goodbye's Arising. One of those songs is Amazing Grace. Over the years, I feel like I've made a whole web of connections to that song, to that hymn. I've heard it at many memorial services, during service trips, worship services. And it's one of the songs I sing to my dad that he still remembers. And yes, this hymn, number 205, has a blue sticky in my hymnal. Every single lyric might not match my theology and my beliefs, but so much of my theology has been held by the song, Amazing Grace. Making meaning with others, connecting with others, being held by a love that is larger than myself. I find that in that song, and I hear it, and it holds me. And just this week, I learned that this is also a favorite hymn of one of you. You shared that this was the first song you sang as a solo in church when you were 4. You helped me add another layer of connection to knowing this hymn. Underneath all that we know is the knowing. Underneath all that we know is still growing.